Okay, joining us, Mr. ERIC TESSMER. Good to see you. How are you doing, my friend?
Good, man. How you doing?
I'm doing good. So I want, what's that?
Staying sane.
Doing the best I can. I think I'm feeling pretty good overall. But now that we're at the kind of 7-8 month mark, new challenges present themselves. So I think I've been very useful the time so far, and I'm interested to hear what you've been doing. But now that we're hitting this new kind of area of this isn't ending soon, I'm interested to know how I'll do over the next 4 to 6 to 12 months. But getting to you, how were things looking for you kind of mid-March? And what did you have planned for the spring and the summer? I know you released a single that was very exciting and definitely took a hit from this whole lockdown. But what were you kind of gearing up for at that time? And then also, what have you been doing over the last 6 to 7 months?
Well, man, when it hit, it was like it hit on like the 13th or something of March, which was like the day we released the single. And the single was with Nancy Wilson. Depeche Mode cover was really cool. I mean, I was super proud of it, and it was just like, man, it was just dead. I guess leading up to mid-March, from January, February, we were on the road pretty much that whole time, which, as a touring musician, like, well, let me turn off my phone ringer. Pro tip. As you well know, because I mean, obviously we played shows together out on the road, out in the middle of tour land. To be touring during like January and February, I mean, that's like that's a real deal. It's like if you can be like bringing out crowds in that weather, going through the Northeast and whatever. And so like we had, the thing is, we were the most prepared we'd ever been. That we had our ducks in the row the most we'd ever had. Yeah. And it was just, we had the most amazing year planned and, confirmed like through August, and then everything just, so, I mean, yeah, in a way that's a total bummer, but, I'm definitely one of those people. I have this really annoying habit. I was born an eternal optimist. And so, like, I always try to find like the good in stuff. And if it's all gonna go to shit, then you're really doing yourself a disservice to sit there and just like wallow in it. I mean, no one needs to be wallowing in shit. So, I'm sorry, I'm cussing on your thing already.
No, cussing is welcome, encouraged even.
Yeah, all right. So, what had been happening, I mean, you know me for years, but you know how it is, like, as John Lennon said, life is what happens when you're busy making other plans. My entire adult life, like, I'd been away, we're both Wisconsin boys. I left home when I was, 18, and like, I very rarely got back. And it turned into this thing where I went home and it seemed like just one day when my parents were old. And, it fucked with me pretty hard. And so I was, and my dad just retired a couple years ago, and he just got a cancer diagnosis like last year, or just to the end of the year of 2018. And so it's like, I go back as much as I can. And when my tour schedule just like was gone, I've gone up there and I've stayed like 2 to 3 weeks at a time, and really got to hang out with my parents and help them out with stuff. And it's been really good. And to be honest, my, so I've been playing guitar since I was just a little kid, like hours a day. And, sometime around April, I kind of just stopped playing guitar for a little while. And what it turned out was that I had developed like really terrible, what's it called? Tennis elbow and golfer's elbow. I think tennis is on the outside and golfer's on the inside. I had them both in both arms really bad. And I was living with this like constant pain in my elbows. And I just was so used to it that I never really noticed it And now that it's like had a chance to like just go away, like, oh my God, I can't tell you how good I feel like every day. But yeah, that was March, and that's been since then. So lately I've been getting back into songwriting. I've been working on new tunes. We've got a few gigs coming up. I mean, I don't know when this is going to air or if it's like immediate or what, but we have some shows coming up. Like we're trying to do some socially distant shows at Antone's and one in Houston. Yeah, one in Houston at Rockefeller's. We'll see how it goes. I know that yesterday was like the highest number in Austin since summer.
Yeah.
So it's, we're just playing it by ear, no pun intended. But yeah, I mean, shit. But other than that, man.
Well, I'm super sorry. I'm really sorry to hear about your pops, man. Is he doing okay now, or is it still?
Man, he's doing great, man. Like it's like they've been really careful, and of course, they live up in the middle of nowhere in Wisconsin, so it's pretty easy for them to socially distance because they automatically are already. But they're really careful. My dad only goes anywhere to go to drive to Madison for hospital tests and stuff. But he's doing really good, and I think they kind of have it under control, at least for the time being. So
that's good to hear, man. Yeah, both my parents are they're fine at the moment. They both come from relatively small families. So my mom just had one brother, and my dad has one brother and one sister. And both my dad and my mom's brother died within the last like 16 months. My mom's dad died unexpectedly last fall, my uncle, and then like a couple months later, my dad's dad got pancreatic cancer, and he passed just like a couple months ago. So I'm definitely kind of, even though my parents are healthy at the moment, God bless, when they get to that age, man, you never know. So it's really nice that you got to spend a lot of time with them. I haven't been able to get, we usually go up to Wisconsin with my daughter and wife in the summers. And obviously now we haven't done any traveling. So we haven't seen them. I guess it would be since Christmas, but we have no plans to go back up there. I mean, it's just, we're playing it super safe. So I don't know when the next time I'll see him in person is, but hopefully sooner than later. We'll see.
Yeah.
But,
when I go up there, man, like like the 2 weeks before or whatever, like a month before I go up, like I don't talk to anybody. I mean, I talk to people, but I don't go anywhere. I just kind of, be by myself. And of course, like the week leading up to it, I'm like getting all the tests done and everything to make sure that it's just a weird time, man. And it's just, I think for a while, I mean, like I said, I don't know when this is gonna this airs or whatever, but like right now,
probably 3-4 weeks, unless you really want me to put it out, I can put it out. But
no, that's not a big deal. Yeah. But I mean, like right now, today is the Thursday after Election Day, right? I mean, this absolute horsecock insanity, like it's just fucking like, what the fuck is going on right now? And man. There's so many people who are so mad at each other, and man, if you really just step back from it, it's all on just somebody say so, like people are like, if you did the research, it's like, man, how much of research that people are doing is just like looking up the websites that kind of are the echo chamber of what they think, and then just like latching on to whatever they want to hear. And it's absolutely insane. Like I don't, where I'm going with this is like when I go to Wisconsin to see my parents, like, it's a rural place, and people, I don't need to wear a mask, or it's like, man, this is just like day one stuff, man. Like I'm not saying you're stupid at all, but like I'm saying, like maybe viral pathology might not be your strong suit, like, fuck, come on.
I know, man. And the whole, like, I think I could be a bit presumptuous here, but I think I'm pretty on point with you, where you come from, the person you are, whatever. My guess is you're probably somewhere in the middle. You're probably a middle kind of path person. Maybe you're more liberal or maybe you're more conservative. I'm not really sure, but I know a lot of people like myself and others, it's either liberal or it's middle. I don't know. I'm sure there are some conservative, musicians, artistic people out there, but for most people, most of my peers, and I know we share a lot of peers, definitely liberal and middle, but I'm definitely middle. And so I always find myself being the devil's advocate, man, like all the time. So people on the left think I'm on the right and people on the right think I'm on the left, but I'm just trying to have conversations about it. And we don't need to get into that now, but
No, I'm glad you bring it up, because I mean, that's really, if you can't have conversations, if everyone is completely polarized, and like, for some reason you think that if somebody doesn't agree with you completely, like, to think that that's like, well, this is, agree to disagree. I mean, we just Mexican standoff. Like, what? Like, that's not like how like communities are built, or neighbors, or patriots. Like, people think that it's like, it's just this. It's almost like when you have like ideas of patriotism, and then there's like this fraternal thing with like, the troops and the soul and the cops and everything. It's like, okay, like, I don't, dude, like, I'm not, my family are veterans, like, I don't inherently have anything against having law enforcement. Like, I'm not a defund the police. But to to have citizens, like, it's our constitutionally given right to ask questions. Like, who's like, there could be nothing less American than having anyone in any walk of life be denied the right to question authority, right?
Mhm.
So it's just bizarre to me. And like you're saying, I've had the same conversation that you just brought up. Like, you have to have conversations. Like, if you don't have conversations, then you just have echo chambers, and you have this. I mean, that's going to be a civil war. And to think that you
Yeah.
have more in common with some guy in office than you have with your next door neighbor is absolute insanity, And one last point I'd like to say is
Bring it on,
that
man.
with politicians or people in government, um, if you really, to be honest, like, the more boring they are, it's probably the better. And that it's absolute, just batshit fucking like insanity to treat any type of politician as like, this is my guy. This is our only hope. First off, if you think that about anybody, you've already played yourself. Second, like, politicians and people in government are not sports teams. Like, it's not like, we're going to win it this year. No matter what happens, I'm sticking with you. It's like, whoa, you need to find somebody who, no one's going to perfectly align with you,
Yeah.
So you find the person who gets the closest. It's like buying a train ticket, like, no train is going to go to your house, but you're going to find the train that gets you the closest there, and you're not going to be like, what, the 10:15 train, we're in it to win it. It's like, no, it's the fucking train you take to get to where you're trying to go, like, where you think is the best place. I don't know.
No, I hear you, man. And I think whether you're on the right or the left, I think people, especially in this climate at this time, and it's election time, and it's all these other factors, of course. But to me, what's become so crystal clear, especially over the last year, but 2-3 years, as my kind of own political awakening is occurring, it's just you cannot underestimate the incompetence of the government on both sides. I mean, it just runs. It is the incompetence level is profound. It's profound, and on both sides of the aisle. So when you're saying, you're putting all your vitriol into how much you hate this guy and how you're going to call him every name in the book, and everybody who aligns himself with that person is evil and wrong and a Nazi or a communist.
That person,
and it's like, dude, do you realize that the side you're voting for is kind of like totally incompetent? I'm saying this about both sides, but anyway, but yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing, is like, when people just shut it down if there's a disagreement, or just name call if there's a disagreement, that has no that has no positive outcome whatsoever. We have to live with each other, for Christ's sake. We have to live with each other. I mean, no one's leaving the country. I mean, maybe 0.0001% might decide to live elsewhere. But so anyway, I enjoy talking about this stuff, by the way, but I don't want to take your whole podcast.
No, I mean, it doesn't matter to me. Like, I'm glad to have somebody to talk to about it. I mean, having those conversations and like, and along your point and my point, like, you talk about like a politician, like let's say whether it be at this juncture, definitely the two big names are Joe Biden and Donald Trump. Like let's say, all right, so I am definitely, I grew up in rural Wisconsin, definitely. Whereas, we both know that Wisconsin is a really cool, old school state, but it's actually progressive, and so it's like I grew up in a rural area. I grew up farming, so that has like conservative values, whatever that even means these days. Right. But at the same time, like with like respect for the environment, and conservation, which, tend to be more like left leaning. Like I don't like to really say like Republicans and liberals and stuff, because like those have turned into buzzwords that just like they're just like immediate reactions, like mentally you're like, oh my God, this is blah, blah. Right. So the thing is, like, it's Joe Biden or Donald Trump, let's say. My wife and I just bought a house. So
congratulations, by the way. I saw it. It looks like a beautiful house.
Yeah, it's cool, man. And it's a cool neighborhood. It's not, I'm stoked that it's not that we could afford to grab a place that wasn't in just like cookie cutterville. But all that aside, a house is a house, right? And along those lines, I'm still a country boy, so I'm just like, oh my God, I need to get out in the country. Why am I in this neighborhood? But no, I love the house. First thing that happens, next door neighbor has like pickup truck parked out front, basically in front of my house, giant Trump flags hanging off the back. All right. So I'm not a fan of Trump, but at the same time, like I'm trying to figure out how I want to say this. Like if you have Joe Biden or Donald Trump, like if either one of those is your guy, but let's say your neighbor is going for the other guy. Okay. And like, when I say that I'm not a fan of Donald Trump, it doesn't mean that I think Joe Biden's going to solve all the problems, like Joe Biden. I mean, Joe Biden's a politician, so that's what Joe Biden does. And I'm not making any delusions in my head about what's going to happen. Anyway, but what my actual point is about this is that, whether Joe Biden is never going to live next door to me, but this guy is, my neighbor is. And like, if I can't see past his political affiliation, despite the fact that I might not agree with it, if I can't see past that, like, what does that make me any better than? And as far as being a citizen, I'm failing if I can't get past that. And the thing is, like, the guy seems like a nice guy. I'm like completely fucking antisocial anyway. So like he hasn't got to talk to me much. Especially since I saw him carrying a guitar, I was like, I do not want to get in this conversation with this guy. But
he'll never let you off the hook. He'll never.
I'm never gonna get out of my yard, man. I'm just trying to go inside. But I mean, the thing is, like, it's ever since Trump got elected, it's been really, I think, guys on both sides of the issue, left, right, middle, wherever you sit, since Trump got elected, it's been fucking weird, man. The last 4 years in this country, none of us ever seen anything like it, Yeah. And right when he got elected, man, it was just, I like to read. I don't consider myself like the smartest guy ever, but I mean, I like to look at stuff with some perspective. And like the thing that always has rang in my ears about this is like the Nietzsche quote of "Be careful fighting monsters." lest you yourself become the monster, you know. And how many people have you seen on the news, on Twitter, just get like saying shit that you're like, why? I never could ever imagine a human being with any justification for acting or talking like this. It's insane. Like, and so
Yeah.
like you're saying, like, you're gonna do all this wild shit, like, what's that helping? There's no positive outcome from it. So
Yeah, I think just to kind of start to put this to rest, I think we're also kind of all being manipulated by the times and the social media and the media, the mainstream media as well. And I think we have a lot less power over the situation than we would like to admit. And I think some of us can take steps back, and a lot of us can't. And even the ones who can take steps back are still vulnerable to this completely unprecedented psychological moment that we're in, with the intensity and the social media and the mainstream media and the biases and all that stuff. But
I would say it's like a psychological overstimulation. It's just like, I don't think
totally
the human brain was wired to deal with all this.
right,
You can't
absolutely
work your 9 to 5 job and raise your family and whatever. But
right, man. No, it's so weird. It's just so weird. But we'll see, man. We'll see. Lot to be decided in the next 48, 72 hours. Although who knows? But so I think I know. What's that?
said we're not going to figure it out right now.
No, but it's fun. It's enjoyable to just hash out a bit. So I think I know a decent chunk about kind of your backstory, Eric. But I'm kind of always most interested with superly fantastic musicians like yourselves. Their roots in the music itself. So I know a little bit just on what I've talked to you about and read about you and stuff like that. But I know you grew up in rural Wisconsin and you're a farm boy, as you said. But when did you start playing guitar? And who were your earliest inspirations? And then as you got older, kind of your teen years, who really got you going and inspired you and you wanted to emulate in those early years?
Man, well, when I was a little kid, my dad's a musician. He plays guitar. And when I was a little kid, he would always, on the weekends, he'd be gone playing gigs. And when I was a little kid, I remember I used to fall asleep listening to him play guitar, practicing downstairs. And, my grandma Tessmer, she played guitar. And on that side of the family, yeah, it's pretty crazy. And she'd always play all these Depression era folk songs. That's when she grew up. But my grandma and my dad just had that love affair with guitar, and for me, it was something that was just always around. And like, there was never I never had it pushed on me, but I just always felt like this, like, draw to it, And so my brother doesn't play guitar. My dad actually bought my brother a guitar, and when he was 12 and I was 8. And my brother, I think he maybe learned a chord or two, and then he didn't take to it, and I just thought it was the coolest thing ever. So that's when I think I really started messing around with it. So when I was a kid, like, my biggest hero was my dad. Like, I just thought he was the greatest guitar player that ever had been. And then as I grew up, my dad was when he was in college, he was actually a radio DJ. And so my dad always, like, he had the CD player and the home studio and stuff when it came out. And it was interesting because, I grew up listening, because on the other side of the coin, my mom was part of Beatlemania, like every girl around that time was. And she actually won, her friend and her won tickets on the radio and got to see the Beatles' first tour when she was 15. So I can't remember what stadium in Minneapolis it was, but they drove from central Wisconsin all the way to Minneapolis. And
shit, man, that's
pretty crazy story here, but like, like back then, like, the Beatles would play like 20, 30 minutes and that was it. That was a concert. And they'd play on these stages that were like, basically card tables, like like kind of like the festival stages we play on.
Yeah, of course.
But like, shitty PA and like, but of course, like probably the greatest amps and guitars that we all lust after nowadays. But my mom told me that when the Beatles got on stage, that like everyone just started screaming and crying, like and bawling. And I was like, whatever, Mom, that's crazy. To see all these excitable girls. And like years later, when Paul McCartney, played in Austin for the first time, I can't remember, what was that, 2012 or 13 or something? I was playing on 6th Street, and his road crew came in to Friends on a Monday night where we always played. And the dudes were like, man, I haven't heard stuff like this since I guitar teched for Eric Clapton and Jeff Beck. And I was like, what? Like, fuck. I call my dad up real quick. Can you tell him that? But no. So anyway, they put us on the list, like row 18 front and center for Paul McCartney. And like, as soon as he came out, man, he hit the stage. He's playing 8 days a week. I just started bawling. It was just so overwhelming.
Wow.
Flipping back to my mom's story though, when they were tearing down, this roadie walked by carrying John Lennon's red guitar. And my mom was like, can I touch that? And her story, the guy's like, no. And so she was just like, touched it and just jetted. So I was like, that's so badass. So
got that juju.
Oh yeah, man. Well, my dad, the ultimate letdown story is my dad told me, he's like, yeah, when I was in high school, like because he lived in Sheboygan. He said when I was in high school in like 67, Hendrix was playing at a bar in Madison.
Wow.
Just I'm like, how was it? How was it? And he was like, oh, my parents wouldn't let me go. I was like, that's the week you run away from home. They'll take you back, man. Like, that's holy shit. Can you imagine seeing Jimi Hendrix in a Madison bar?
Oh my God.
Like goosebumps right now, man. Fuck. Anyway, so that like I grew up listening to the Beatles a lot, like a lot of Pink Floyd, a lot of Hendrix, a lot of Cream. It's pretty big publicized part of my story that my dad named me after Clapton and Hendrix. But I'll tell you, like, one of my first guitar heroes after my dad, because when you're a kid, like you hear music, you're like, oh yeah, I like this or I like that, but you're not like, who's playing guitar, who's playing the drums, who produced this? I just like music, and then like I think my first guitar hero really, other than my dad, was Slash. Because when I started like digging music on my own, I think the music that I've been raised on kind of put me to that, I like good guitar tone and I like stuff that kicked ass. And then I got into Guns N' Roses and was like, damn, this is some badass shit. Like, I remember my buddy had his dad had an LP of Appetite for Destruction. And goddamn, was that just like, geez, electric tits, man. That was just awesome. And then, from there, I started to really like go back into the music that I was raised on and just like really start to pay attention to it. It's not like I was hearing it for the first time, but it's like I was hearing it with fresh ears. I went back and like I got so hard into Zeppelin, so hard into Deep Purple, just as like hard rock bands, as they'd probably be called. But then, I mean, my obsession with Hendrix just grew because Jimi Hendrix was something I always heard. It was just like always around. I always heard Jimi Hendrix and I always heard Pink Floyd. So, when I really picked up guitar, by that time I was so into Pink Floyd, and Pink Floyd was my first real concert that wasn't going to see my dad play.
Wow.
Yeah.
Jealous. How old were you when you saw Floyd?
I was 12.
Whoa.
I saw.
So was that would have without Waters?
Yeah.
Without Waters.
So that was July 3rd, 1994, Camp Randall Stadium. It was the last tour.
Damn. Wow.
I was in section QQ. anyway, I mean, it was insane because,
Whoa, man.
you know, Gilmore, I mean, once I really started studying guitar and like, I'm trying to get sounds out of it, man, like guitar, like Gilmore was the fucking guy. And like, once I saw Pink Floyd when I was 12, because I grew up, listening to them all the time. But when I saw them, and by the time I was 12, I was already watching like The Wall, like, a couple times a week, which is not normal 12-year-old stuff.
No, no.
But like I knew every word to every song. I knew all the guitar solos. And when I saw Pink Floyd and I saw Gilmore play the solo for Comfortably Numb, and the entire stadium went black, and this giant disco ball is spinning around. It's probably 50 feet wide. And like, Gilmore is such an emotive player and he's just so lyrical, and he doesn't rush. And he's just like, it's just like he's just singing the most beautiful song you've ever heard.
Mm-hmm.
And like the words don't matter because there it is. And like he's playing this, and like this disco ball spinning, and it opens like an iris to the music, and it's like, holy shit, y'all, like this is the most it's probably the most amazing thing I've seen yet, like goddamn. And like in that moment I was like, dude, like I can't do anything other than play guitar. Like I'm gonna be a guitar player, because that just, like, holy shit. 12 years old, and I was like, I feel like I just stared God in the face. I was like, God damn, that shit is insane. Wow. And like, and then like, so I really got attached to that feeling. And like, to me, from that moment, I realized that to me, like, people, like, I can't dance, and, it's just, to me, like, a lot of people are like, okay, well, I listen to music for the words, or like I listen to the music for the beat and the drums or the bass so that I can dance, or I listen to this because when I'm feeling down, it gives me comfort. And for me, it was always like, lock me into that fucking energy, because like I feel like my being, like, it understands energy. It understands like all these things, like comfort, dancing, all that stuff. It's a different form of energy, but it's all just this. To me, it's like this energy translation. And I feel like when people lock into that music and you find that frequency that it's at, I'm not trying to get too existential here, but I mean, I think it's more science, really. But I mean, I think when you, I mean, you stood in front of a room of people who are just like with you, and like when everyone's together on that thing, and that energy starts like to just build around the room, and it's like it's jumping from person to person, dude, like, fuck drugs. Like, what is that? Because that's all I ever want to feel, so. And that's a lot of how I kind of approach songwriting too, is just like, when people send me a bunch of words, I'm like, okay, well, but like, what is this? What's the feel? Like what's the energy pushing behind this? Like,
right.
So
first of all, I'm so glad you're connected with your past and your roots so strongly, because I love hearing about that. I love talking about it. And it certainly sounds like you had an exceptionally profound experience at pretty young, you know what I mean? Like to I think you said you started at about 8, and then to have that religious experience at 12. For me, that was all kind of happening at the same time. I always loved music, but I mean, I didn't start playing until I was 15, and I was really kind of taking all those religious, super existential moments in right around that 14 to 15 is when Hendrix, Floyd, Zeppelin, the blues, Metallica, all these things were coming in, and I was just obsessed with exactly what you're talking about, the energy. So kind of following that line, in terms of, you being kind of on the younger side of everything in terms of a trajectory in music. I know you said, and I believe I knew that prior, was that you came to Austin when you were 18. So I came when I was, I think, 25 or 26. So I wouldn't say I was a fully formed artist, but I was 70% there. So I'm very interested to know your experience moving to Austin as an 18-year-old, where I can't speak for where you were at, in terms of how formed you were, or how much of the skills you have now, or when you were 30 or when you were 18. But, kind of take us back to those first year, 2 or 3 in Austin. I know when I first came here, I came here alone. I didn't know anybody. Something tells me you had a similar thing. And I remember one of the first things I saw was like, Austin Chronicle or free paper with all the listings of musicians.
Yeah.
And I was just like, holy fucking shit.
Good
I was
luck.
like, all right, let's get to work. Let's go.
Yeah.
But I mean, at least I knew that was kind of coming in, but as an 18-year-old, I can't even imagine it. So why don't you kind of tell us what it was like those first years you were here?
Well, all right. So with the background being Wisconsin, it's important, I guess. I mean, for me, I feel it's important to lay out like kind of like the situation, because I was like, I wasn't a stranger to the world in a way, because like when I was a junior in high school, I was an exchange student in Germany. So like I had been outside of my hometown. I knew the world was bigger than rural Wisconsin. But it was still amazingly naive. My senior year of high school, my drummer in my high school band and I were going to move up to Madison, because, when you grow up in Wisconsin, or you're kind of in a sheltered environment, you have to build your view of the outside world that you're dreaming about from any source that you can find. And, this is pretty much, pre-internet, everything was dial up. So it's like, there wasn't really not that like the internet is that great of a barometer of reality now. But like then it was just like this kind of rudimentary tool. And so a lot of what we understood about the music industry was from like Guitar World or Guitar Player magazine.
Sure.
And, as you get older, if there's young musicians watching this, or even older musicians watching this right now, Guitar Center, Guitar World, that stuff, while they have their good points and they have their place, they are selling you a fucking dream, and like the sooner you realize that your actual connection with music and people is what's actually creates amazing music, instead of like whatever bullshit they're selling you, the better off you'll be. Anyway, so we had this idea, and at that point, there was very little for do-it-yourself, and so the big thing was to get signed. Like you had to get signed somehow, and so we were like, we got to move to a city to get signed, because I don't think that the talent show in Richland Center, Wisconsin, is going to get us, on MCA's radar. So we're like, we got to move to a city. You're like, well, what's the closest city? It's like, oh, it's Madison. Madison's the closest city. So, okay, I guess we got to move to Madison, because like we thought just like there'd be talent agents all over, because it's a city, as soon as you get the city limits, there's talent agents everywhere. So anyway, so my best friend, I was a week or two before graduation. He's like, hey man, let's skip school. Got to talk to you. Turns out his girlfriend was pregnant. So he's like, oh, I can't move, I can't do this. And I'm all bummed out. My dad's like, first off, we got to go back, because the last question, like anybody who's ever heard me play knows that like Stevie Ray Vaughan is a huge influence of mine. Like I have an obsession with Hendrix. I have an obsession with Stevie Ray Vaughan, Elbert King, Elmore James, Freddie King, Johnny Guitar Watson. So like when I got to my teens, I would actually, God, I'm sorry, I'm so all over the place chronologically. I'm trying to like stuff my life into like an hour, but
I know it's tricky, and I'm sorry I'm asking you to do it.
no, it's cool, man. It's like, it's always good to stop and just like take stock of it. But when I can't remember how old I was. My brother had a band recital, like a junior high, I think, or whatever. Anyway, my parents had left me home alone, so I was old enough to stay home by myself. And the only channel we got was PBS. We had every once in a while, Fox 47 would come in from Madison, on our thing, but I think that's how I watched Mork and Mindy when I was younger. But so Austin City Limits was the fucking main line, like wow. I got to see so anyway, I grew up reading my dad's guitar magazines, and this guy came out on Austin City Limits, and I didn't see the start of it, so I didn't know who he was, but he had this SRV on his guitar, and I was like, there's something fucking different about this guy. I was like, God, I know I've seen that guitar. I've seen this guy in these magazines, and what the fuck? This is so badass. And it was still in that stage of my life where I was like, I don't know shit, I just know what I like. And I really like what you just said, because you're getting into Pink Floyd, Zeppelin, Hendrix, Metallica. It's I think it's so cool you threw Metallica in there, because kids are the fucking coolest when it comes to music, because they don't give a shit what's cool. Right. What's cool is what they like. It's right. You hear it with your ears, and you're not judging it with your eyes. You're not listening with your eyes. Yep. You're listening to it you're not listening to it through your friends' opinions. You're like, holy shit, Metallica's badass. I remember when I was like, Metallica's fucking kicks ass. It's yeah. And I still think they do. But I mean, it's not necessarily what I want to listen to. And I hate that as you get older and you get somewhat jaded, and you think, well, I don't want to listen to it. It doesn't have some guys playing silver tone with dead strings,
right?
And, Dan Electro amp. Come on, man. Purists suck. Anyway, so when I moved to Austin, flip back, all right. So let me finish this thought about Stevie. Is that when I started getting into Hendrix and Cream, Clapton, and digging into this stuff, a lot, just like every story where it's I started reading the liner notes and be like, who the fuck are these people? Who are these guys talking about in interviews? And so I got into the blues so fucking hard, just so and so there was, I remember when being in high school, and I always had, my Discman, my long bus ride from out in the country into school and whatever,
Same thing, man.
Dude, it was the best. But
bus ride, all about the bus ride music, man. It was so important to me.
Well, I mean,
same thing.
When I was in middle school, I had the Walkman, and my dad had a tape deck going from the turntable. So I'd make recordings of Zeppelin, and it's I'm sitting there listening, just analyzing every sound I hear on these 90-minute Maxell tapes, and until they get destroyed, then I'd tape it again on another one, and of course I can't deny Nirvana, talking about shit that's cool, Nirvana, one of the most badass bands ever. Anyway, but by the time I got into high school, I was so I listened to Pink Floyd, I listened to Hendrix, Zeppelin sometimes, and the rest of it was fucking straight blues. I just everything, Stevie Ray Vaughan. I saw Kenny Wayne Shepherd when he was 18 in the Sandbar in Arena, and which that was I was watching this guy play, and dude, he was fucking ripping, and I was
he was crazy. He's crazy, man. Especially how young he was when he was doing that shit.
Oh God, it was so great. It was that was another thing was oh my God, you're just you're young. I think I was 16 or 15 or 16. And I was I'm just so fucking excited watching this, man. I'm oh God, it was that's what I want to do. So, yeah, I mean, so I got into all that shit. Anyway, so my buddy tells me, fast forward a couple years, my buddy tells me when we're skipping school that his girlfriend's pregnant, can't move to Madison. And so I'm like, oh my God, all my hopes and dreams are getting dashed, you know. And my dad's like, what the fuck are you so worried about? Your girlfriend's not pregnant. Like, you can go wherever you want now. He's like, you could go to New York, you could go to LA, you could go to Nashville, you could go to Austin. Cause he knew, I mean, obviously, nobody who lived within like 30 miles of me was unaware of my absolute obsession with like Stevie Ray Vaughan, Jimmy Vaughan, like, all things Austin. So I was like, the second he said Austin, was like, that's where I'm moving. You know, that's where I'm going. So anyway, when I moved here, I literally rolled into Austin on my 19th birthday. So I left home when I was 18. I moved to Austin on my 19th birthday. And it was just like, I remember, I mean, that, you know, no cell phones. And I had calling cards, you know, pay phones. And I remember calling my dad from the 7-Eleven on Guadalupe on the drag. And I was like, oh my God, I'm in Austin. I just saw the Stevie Ray Vaughan statue. And then the gas station was playing KLBJ. And I was on the phone with my dad talking to him about how amazing Austin was. And of course, you know, you're on UT campus, so you see like the hottest girls ever made walking by and everything. I was like, oh my God, like, what is going on? And then I realized that KLBJ was playing Comfortably Numb, like the ending solo. I was like, what is going on? You know, so anyway, when I first got here, man, I came down here on my 19th birthday. I checked it all out. And I wanted to be prepared when I moved. So using the fledgling internet at the time, I had located a place to stay, which was a townhouse in East Austin. And I got a room, and the guy that rented me the room turned out to be in a cult. He turned out to be a sex addict. I mean, super fucking greasy dude, you know, and it was a bad situation. And so all my neighbors, one of my neighbors, a guy named Larry Henson, he was in gospel choirs. He was a gospel singer, and he still is. And anyway, he got me playing guitar for these gospel choirs. And so I would, you know, here I am, 19 years old, touring around Texas, in these gospel choirs. And I mean, we just go church to church, and like I was the proverbial salt and the pepper shaker. You know, I was like the only white person anywhere we went, which I was like, dude. I mean, I grew up in rural Wisconsin listening to black music, you know, and where there are no black people. And I come down here, and these dudes accept what I do and think I'm good. I was like, and it was such a validating thing on some level, as ridiculous as that may seem, but
no, not ridiculous at all. Totally normal, actually. That's normal.
So I was just like so into this, and you know, like it was fun, but at the same time, like, I mean, if you're not gonna be playing blues, like playing like old school gospel is not too far removed. You know, it's just like a different side of the same coin. So that was cool. Around that time, my dad had to have his hip replaced. So at the time, like I would sneak into clubs downtown and, you know, blues jams or whatever. I got kicked out of Joe's Generic. I got kicked out of 311. I got kicked out of Black Cat. Like, which, you know, I don't know, was Joe's Generic around when you moved here?
No.
Because to me, like Joe's Generic was like the last great club as far as like 6th Street, because you know when Joe's closed and we played the very last show there, it was like I knew that the street was about to change, you know, forever. Which I mean, it's always changing, so it's not. It seems a lot more huge in your mid-20s, like, oh my God, this place is closed.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, as if like all the other old musicians haven't seen every club before this close. But you know, so anyway, my dad had his hip replaced, so I moved home for like a year. I was like, because at the point, you know, rural family in Wisconsin, we're still heating the house with wood. So I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna go home and cut down like a forest of trees, make sure my parents are okay. While I'm there, I might as well check out what college is like, because like I said, I was a German exchange student, so I tested into like third year German or something, and I was like, all right, well, I'm gonna do this. So went there. I was like, by the end of the first semester, I was already in, I think, like two bands. I was playing gigs like every night I could, because I was going to school in Eau Claire. So I wasn't in Richland Center. It's not like I was going there, but I was like miserable, just absolutely fucking miserable. Like this is not, and like I was, you know, I already lived in the wild as an adult for a year, and then I was in classes mostly with college freshmen who had never done, barely wiped their ass by themselves at this point in their life. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I was just like, this sucks, and you guys are idiots, and like, you know, whatever.
I hear you.
So I was like, I got to get back to Texas. So like, by the time I was in my second semester of that year, it reminds me of that Charlie Robinson song where he's like, my friend's like, to hear me talk about that year, because like I spent a year in college, you know, I was like, that was fucking it, man. I learned all I needed to, you know, I learned what I came to learn. And that was that I had to get back to Texas. So you know, I played as much as I could, practiced all the fucking time, like saved as much money as I could, got day job, would go home on the weekends after working graveyard shifts all week and playing gigs whenever I could, and go home and work on the farm, like just all this stuff. Got back to Austin. And then, right, you know, after I turned 21. So then I didn't have to, because like the biggest stumbling block to that point was my age. You know, like I kept getting in trouble. I kept getting kicked out. I didn't have anybody that I could have take me to bars, you know, like, or be like, hey, he's with me. He's a musician. Just give him a chance, you know, any of that stuff. So, like, you know, like you said, you know, you didn't know anybody. Like, go here, man. Cold open in a new town as a musician. That's tough shit. I mean, that's like a
Takes time. Takes a
new
lot of
kid
time.
in school in a different town
Right.
kind of vibe, you know? So,
yeah.
What ended up happening was, you know, then the advice that all people are like, oh, hey man, I'm new in town. What advice? And like, go to blues jams, man. If you play blues or blues based music, great way to meet people and like learn about the scene and learn about how other people play around here is to go to a blues jam. So I went to blues jams, and then after the first one, I got hired onto a blues band, and so I started touring with them. And at that point, when I moved back, I was like, I'm not finding a goddamn place to live on the internet again. I'll go down there and I'll find a place. So I ended up living in my car for a while, which, I mean, if you've never done that, it fucking sucks. But, you know, means to an end. But
How
anyway,
long did you do that for?
3 weeks to a month.
Okay.
I mean, like 3 weeks to a month, live in a car. I mean, we're not talking road tripping. We're talking about living in your fucking car in one place. It sucks dick so hard. Anyway, unless I mean, not judging. I'm just saying, if you think sucking dick's a great thing, then it's not that. Anyway, it's a really shitty thing. So then the guy I was playing with, like, we ended up not getting along. So I'll just leave it at that, because time wounds all heals, or whatever it says. Anyway, so by the time I played with this guy, I played with him for, I guess I started in like February of 2003 playing with this guy. And then by June, I started playing under my own name, because I was like, man, I'm gonna have to build up, like, you know, knowing everybody in my, my skill set or whatever. And like, I'll start my own band in like 2 years or whatever. Like you get these ideas of what you think you need to do or like what the actual realistic plan is. And the thing is, like with the music business, at least in my experience, it's just so fucking unpredictable, like you don't know what's going to happen. And like, here I was within like 4 months or so, and here I am performing under my own name. And I have been ever since, and it's been a wild thing, man. But yeah, that was like my introduction to getting into the scene in Austin. And then I guess around by the time like 2004 rolled around, I was kind of like the hot shot guitar player on 6th Street, the young hot shot or whatever. So then that just snowballed into a whole drunken mess as time went on. But that's all behind
Well, just
me.
to go back on touch on some of those things you mentioned, because there's so much goodies in there. But to go back to kind of the beginning of the thing you said is I was the exact same way with kind of the Hendrix, Cream, Floyd, and then the hard rock. You just when you're in the if you like guitar music, you're gonna hit on hard rock, whether it's Guns N' Roses or Metallica or Nirvana, because it's undeniable the feeling you get from it.
Yeah.
But I dove so hard into blues too, and I was obsessed with the it was like, for me, it was like a treasure hunt. When you're looking for the blues stuff, I mean, it was literally a treasure hunt. You get these magazines, and you read about who your favorite guitar players were, and then you go into that rabbit hole. And it's not only the magazines, but like I remember a big source for me was they had these compilation albums, which can be crappy, but I found some good ones. And I found one that was like, I think it was called Led Astray. And it was basically the original versions of all the Zeppelin.
Oh yeah.
Zeppelin covered a lot. So it was like Blind Willie Johnson, Howlin' Wolf, Robert Johnson, all those guys. And Joan Baez was on it. And it was all that thing. And that was a huge roadmap for me out, because some of it I knew, and some of it was like, it was literally almost all the heavy hitters. And but I loved that part of the journey, man. I loved it. And the liner notes, like you said. And it's funny what you said about the creep you moved in when you first got here, because the first few nights I was in Austin, man, I came down and I found like a $25 a night, just a place to stay for a few nights, where I tried to find an actual home. And the people I was staying with had a couple other people that were staying, and it was a couple, and they were exorcists. They were literal exorcists. I was like, okay, welcome to Austin. This is a good start. You can't go wrong from here.
Clean start.
Yeah. But and then also what you said about the gospel, I think that's awesome. I didn't know that about you. And I was just talking to Dr. Joe yesterday, and he has a huge gospel background. But yeah, it's amazing. And I was very keen on what you said about, if you can't find a blues band or whatever to find, playing gospel music is the next best thing. And we were just talking about how crazy the foundation of American and world music, it all comes back to the church. You know what I mean? It's like the Black church is the entire pop music industry for the last 120 years. And I use pop as a general term. I don't mean bubblegum pop. I mean popular music, rock and roll, rhythm and blues, funk, rap, all of it.
Pop is such a, it's funny. Like I grew up the same way, and it might be the Wisconsin thing, but like, you grow up as a musician in Wisconsin, you think of pop as a dirty word, but it's like the Beatles are pop, right. It's like pop is generally just good music. Like, it's just like, it's not that like blues is not good music, but it's not pop music because it's not like, it doesn't necessarily like have the songwriting that pop has,
Yeah.
Like for me, like to embrace pop in the last several years of my life, I'm just like, God damn. Cause like it gets to a point, especially if, like for someone with me, like my musical career has been completely based on guitar, right? Like that's how people know me. And like when you say my name, if somebody knows who I am, like that's what they think of as guitar. Mm-hmm. And that's, I mean, extremely flattering. But at the same time, like I am obsessed with songs, man. Like it's just like I love songwriting and I love really good songwriting. And that's why I write songs so fucking slowly, is because I'm always just like, and like for better or for worse, you know, like I'm amazed by dudes who can just like Tom Petty, who can write Free Falling in a day, you know, like 15 minutes to write Free Falling. That's
Didn't Hendrix write Wind Cries Mary in like 30 minutes and an offshoot, like he just came up with it. They needed an extra song. I mean, that is such a beautiful song. I mean, Hendrix, of
remember.
course,
I mean,
but Wind Cries Mary is such a beautiful song. That's one of the first songs that brought me into Hendrix, actually, was Wind Cries Mary. But
that
no, I
first
hear you.
man,
What the fuck? How the fuck? I mean, for Christ's sake, what was there, 17 songs on that album? I mean,
yeah, well, I
good
mean,
Lord.
and it was just like built up from just like random recording sessions. Like whenever Chess Chandler had money, they just run him in there and do a few songs and run him out, you know. And like he was living in just like some apartment, you know. God damn, dude, that's this dude who'd never been out of this, you know. God, it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, Hendrix is, it's cliche, but Hendrix is the reason I picked up the guitar. It was Red House that literally got me to pick up the guitar. And I was my Hendrix obsession was a 7 to 8 year super Hendrix. Obviously a lot of other shit too. But I was lucky enough to have Hendrix as during the Napster era and all the beginnings of that, where I found not only all the studio shit, but I was able to get so much of the live bootlegs that had never before been available on all these other studio shit that crazy. So I was lucky in that regard. But I know this has been amazing. I want to get to a couple other things before we finish up. Kind of taking it from your beginning years in Austin, and you've been here a while and you've done so much work and seen so much. I want to get your sense of Austin as a whole, where you saw it from when you got here, the middle years, and where it is now, because obviously it's been changing so much so fast for so long, and you've seen such a extensive and dramatic arc of the city.
Right.
And I'm interested to know, from the time you've been here, as best as you can tell, what were the years that you think it was kind of a peak in terms of where you stand as an individual in your experience in the city? What were the years where it's like, man, this is the shit. This is where it's really hitting its groove. Maybe that's still now. But it certainly seems like you would go along the lines of things are hitting a point now. And I've kind of picked up on them definitely before COVID. My timeline is definitely within the last 2 years ish, where it's starting to hit a point where, okay, where is this going? You know, is this live music capital thing ending? Because it could end at some point. And it certainly seems like things are changing. But I think you get the gist of what I want to get out of you here, but you can kind of give us your, you know.
So I'm always careful when I talk about this, because like when I was younger, you talk about it and you feel like you have any type of point, you just spit it out.
Right.
But the thing is, for me, my Austin experience, like what I would think of as like the golden years, for me, and like live music and doing all this stuff, would be between 2003, 4, you know, when I really got in the scene, you know, so that's really like the start of my experience. But like when I started to notice shit was changing dramatically, and probably not in the best way, would probably been like 2009 or 10.
So
now,
before I even got here,
right?
Before
like, the thing was, like, when I first started playing on 6th Street, I had a Vibra King daisy chained into a super reverb and just fucking, you know, blasting. And at that time, all the bars up and down 6th Street had their windows wide fucking open. Nobody ever said shit. And, you know, my very first fledgling fan base, people would be like, because I'd be playing different places every night. Like I was playing almost every night on 6th Street, because I mean, that's how I was surviving. And they would be like, yeah, I can park up by the Capitol and I just follow the sound down. I find where you're playing, because like they could hear me all the way down by Capitol, you know? Wow. So I remember when they built the Frost Tower and we were all just like drunk and smoking cigarettes outside of friends, like, holy shit, it looks like an owl. But like when I moved here, Austin felt, obviously coming from rural Wisconsin, growing up, 10 miles outside of a town of 5,000 people. And it's like the biggest city in any direction for like an hour and a half. Austin was obviously a city to me, like, but Austin, it didn't take very long after like my band got a foothold that I started touring, going all the way to New York City and everything. And then you realize like this is a big fucking city, but like Austin always had that vibe of being a big small town, and like in the best way possible, because you had that sense of community, but it was big enough that there was diversity and there was so much going on and everybody embraced the arts so much. And it's interesting because you can't really think of it in terms of like the last 4 years, because when you have like going back to the political, not even political, it's like a social situation we've got going on where like if you don't agree with me, then like fuck you. So like you don't have like people who lean right and lean left hanging out so much together. But like I think at that point in Austin, it was like everybody parties. Come on, let's just fucking like have a good time. It's like
Right.
let's play the music real fucking loud. I made a post about this on Instagram last week. I was like, because I saw some footage from our last show at Threadgills, and Threadgills was one of those places that like I'd always dreamed of playing there when I was a kid. When I moved here, I was like, God damn, that's such a great, like lofty place to play. And it's like I really miss the place. But the thing that I have to be careful about looking back is like how you look back through a lens of where you were at the time, and that colors everything that of how you remember it. So during that time between like 2004, 2009, 2010, like I was in my mid 20s. I was playing guitar for a living in the coolest city I've ever found. And it was constantly a good time. And I couldn't believe my amazingly good fortune to live in this place where this was even possible. And so, yeah, I look back on that like, God damn, Austin was awesome then, but like, it's hard to say because like, it wasn't, I don't know. I remember the first South by South. I'm going to be all over the place. And like, my answer is not going to be like this, like really succinct.
It's fine.
These three
No, of
sentences
course, man.
sum it up. But the first South by Southwest, I remember standing outside the 311 Club on 6th Street, and there were a few tour vans, or like just like vans, band vans, double parked on 6th Street. Street wasn't shut down. They didn't even used to. They always used to shut down the street on the weekends, Thursdays, Fridays, Saturdays. At I think it was 10 p.m. Like they'd come through and they'd put up barricades. And then 6th Street turned into a pedestrian precinct, but you could still park your car there earlier. So if you were a musician, you'd park your car outside the venue, you'd circle the block and park outside like friends. And then when you're done, you'd load all your shit out into the van. And in my case, you'd shut the van up, you'd lock it, and you'd go get fucking hammered, So, and then you'd drive drunk home, which happened more than I'd like to admit, but like it did. But I'm just saying that like, and then you'd be like, you come back to your car, and whatever time of night it was, let's say between 10 and 2, you just pull out, slowly, and like wait for the crowd to just let you out, and like it was all good. But like, now it's everything. I mean, for better, for worse, there's just so many more people here. I think that when people ask like, what's the problem with Austin? Why doesn't it feel the same? It's because, in my opinion, or my experience, I remember the first time I got a noise violation at Friends. I was like, what the fuck is even going on right now? Like, what the fuck? Like, who's ruining the party? Like, and it was because the Littlefield building used to just be like this parking garage and building stuff, like a little mini mall. They built this giant fucking high rise. And we're like, okay, so these people want to live fucking downtown. Like, why would you want to live right on 6th Street? Right. And so Austin claiming to be the live music capital of the world, for some reason, like you talking about like the incompetence in government. And I was like, wouldn't the live music capital of the world, now just bear with me here. If you are taking how much money in revenue every year off of the backs of working musicians every night of the year, calling yourself the live music capital of the world, and then you have downtown residences and you don't have a building code that requires soundproof windows. That to me is just like, well, I mean, what the fuck?
I mean, you could almost, I want to hear you flesh this out more, but I mean, it really almost is that simple. It almost comes down to the simplicity of the botch of that whole dynamic, because that has infiltrated the entire scene ad nauseum. I mean, it's crippled it. But anyway, go ahead. I mean, it's such a simple thing, but it really does come down to that. It's such a botch.
Definitely. I mean, that's a huge thing, at least in my mind. But my other point is that when, like I was saying before, Austin, when I moved here, Austin, to me, in my glory days in Austin, I wouldn't say my glory days. Like, I've had so many great times in Austin every year that I've been here. I mean, the last 5 years of it have been sober, and that's just fucking more amazing than I could imagine. But like in my 20s, let's say, when like my 6th Street glory days of playing music like loud and proud and just all over the place, it became clear to me that like everyone was like, they were out enjoying it, being in the moment, experiencing stuff. It seemed like the music was respected on a deeper level. Like, people understood that this was special, but what became clear to me, especially watching stuff like South by Southwest just exploded, and ACL Fest exploded. And then all of a sudden, I feel like in 2009 or 2010, it felt like a festival. One of the festivals came to town, because Austin's always been this business hub, a convention hub. Like, it's one of those places that corporations are like, hey, we're having a convention. We're going to have it in Vegas. We're going to have it in Austin, like, it's just one of those places. So it was if you understand that, and I understood that very early on. And so I was like, I built up an email list starting in Friends. Every time I played on 6th Street, I had this email list there. And, I built up a fan base worldwide. And like, so I'm just so thankful that I had any type of foresight on that. And if we're going to talk about 6th Street real quick, I've had a few young musicians be like, hey man, like what do you think about 6th Street? You think like people should pay more? You think like the clubs are fucking you over? You think like, what do you think about that? I'm like, I think that you're not thinking big picture enough. Like, it's kind of like, if you were to read the Bible and you look at, I mean, like, I'm not like pushing religion on anybody, because but like, there's a lot of wisdom and shit. Like lines like when somebody's trying to get out of paying taxes, and Jesus is like, give to Caesar that which belongs to Caesar. That's how I look at 6th Street. Respect 6th Street for what the fuck it is and what you can get out of it. You know what I mean? Like, just like, don't try to increase your 10% cut from the bar, because it's going to be 10% in tips. That's 6th Street. Like, give to 6th Street what 6th Street asks, but be a smart motherfucker and get out of 6th Street what you came to get. If you're going down there wanting to be a lifer, then you've already failed. So you should stop complaining to anybody, you know? Or if you went down there to be a lifer, then cool, you're doing it. Don't complain. Anyway, that was a little tangent I just want to throw in there because as an Austin musician who's spent as much time on 6th Street as anybody, get smart. But anyway, as far as Austin and the big shift and where it's at now and where it's headed, the thing was like there used to be this thing, and I'm sure that it's still somewhat there, but like the big thing on South Congress every month was First Thursday, and everyone would go down to First Thursday on Congress. Congress, I mean, it was like everybody. Austin was a big small town. Like you might not know everybody, but everybody looked familiar. You know, like people who went out, like, hey, you know, it's like if you see like a cute girl, you know, you might see her again, you know.
Sure. Yeah.
So super cool scene. There were Sea Boys used to be this place called Trophies, and they just had these fucking badass burgers and picnic tables and stuff. And anyway, I'm not trying to get all sentimental looking back or anything, but the thing was, it was like just such a cool vibe. It was just such a cool, open, free, relaxed, very artistic friendly, very, friendly, just like this really cool community. And like, you'd have like a music community like you have in Dallas, which is very much known for, at least it was at that time, for being like very competitive, very kind of dramatic a little bit. Much more like with guitar players, they'd be like, let's cut heads kind of thing and like be very competitive. And then for better, for worse, Austin's always been that kind of laid back, like, yo, what's up? It's all good. Like, love it. Love the sound of your band, and, you have something like Nashville where everything's just like pro, like everyone like shows up, they know the song, they know the changes, but like,
yeah,
there's there's a lot that you can gain there, but there's a lot you can lose to it. So the only thing is, like, my biggest takeaway when I saw it happening was when Austin, it was like when the world caught on. It was like, Austin is badass as fuck. Dude, if I could live anywhere, I'd want to live in Austin. And so the people who, I guess, had the reins in Austin were like, hey, we could make some fucking money here. So I would say the last 10 years in Austin to me have felt like a take the money and run situation. It's like, hey man, these motherfuckers are gonna move here, so fucking let's take the money and run. Like there's less about saving that in Austin, which makes it cool, or has made it cool for years, and just seeing how many of these motherfuckers we can stack on top of each other, right? Here's the big takeaway. When you take a lifestyle, no matter what it is, but especially one like Austin, you take a lifestyle and you try to make it into a commodity, it destroys it immediately. It just vaporizes. You can't do that. Like, it's like you're trying to sell this experience, but by putting a price tag on the experience, it just evaporates. It's like when I moved to Austin, it was super fucking cheap. It was so cheap to live here. That's why one of the reasons it was so cool is because all the cool people who aren't good with money could live here, like, that's it. Like,
yeah.
Until like 2009 or whatever, I don't think I'd ever paid more than $400 a month in rent anywhere.
Wow.
Like,
yeah. You talk about so much cool. So you put it so well in so many different ways. Just to go back to a couple things, but the 6th Street thing, I love the way you compare that to the Caesar thing. I think that was always my kind of approach. And, I think if I'm being honest, I think 6th Street hit a point of no return a couple of years ago. I just think it's the tourism is not there anymore. It was built around tourism, and then the tourism evaporated from it. So once it hit that point, I was like, I don't know how to see how this can bounce back. But what the chunky years I did have there, and it does, and I everything you're saying makes sense time wise. I moved here in 2011. So the way I see it based on your, what's the word I'm looking for? Evaluation of it is I really caught kind of the 5 or 6 years following that 2009 kind of turning point, whatever.
Right.
I was kind of in on it. I was glad to be in on it. It was fantastic. And even as it was turning into this new thing, you know, the noise stuff put aside, even though that's a big thing, you know, there were still all these new cool places opening up and there were new
Yeah.
opportunities for
I mean,
musicians.
just to clarify real quick, I'm not saying that like there's hasn't been like really cool shit.
Sure. No.
Like, I mean, I think I stopped playing on 6th Street in 2016.
Something that seems about right. 16,
And
17,
like
something like that.
when I was like, hey man, it's just time to move on because like I'm selling out like Antones and shit like nights in a row. So like I don't and which is great. I mean, it took a while to get there, but like everyone happens at a different time. But like, man, yeah, every time I played on 6th Street, I had an amazing time. It's just like it's not so much. It's just like touring, right? It's like it's not really the 2 to 4 hours a night you spend on stage. It's the 20 fucking hours around it. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's like that's where tours are made, and that's where like we're at with Austin. Like, okay, so yeah, like I still love playing on stage. I still love playing in Austin. But like, why do I have to sit in traffic for like fucking like 4 hours a day? Like, why? What is that all
Mm-hmm.
about? Like, why does it that like none of my friends can afford to live here anymore? It's anyway. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
no, that's fine. I'm totally clear on that. And just to kind of finish off my thoughts and your thoughts together was, it just seems like an inevitability. I mean, aside from the botch of the noise stuff, which really seems to have been instrumental in some unfortunate declines in the culture itself, the inevitability of cool things not lasting forever. I mean, the way you described it as so fucking cool, it was that everyone knew it as that. And for you to be in the center of the hurricane of coolness, you're very fortunate. I consider myself someone lucky to have, experienced a peripheral, half decade of just super cool Austin before whatever. But
Yeah.
you were really in the eye of a hurricane of just super, the coolest city in any way you want to look at, one of the coolest fucking cities in the planet. And the inevitability of more people wanting a piece of that, more money taking bites out of that. It's pretty much inevitable. I guess it'll be interesting moving forward. You see the coolest cities in the world, whether it's New Orleans, Los Angeles, New York, they go through stages, right? I mean, New York is the most dangerous place in the world, and then it becomes a Disney, super safe, and it's got these romantic parts when it's dangerous, and it's extra fun when it's safe or whatever. And LA has its. So we'll see if Austin can go through stages, or if it will just kind of homogenize into this tech town of who knows. But just to kind of wrap things up, I want to hear you personally, more industry related stuff, and what do you have planned for yourself moving forward? I know you mentioned now your arms are feeling better, you've been able to rest, but I know I gotta believe you're still itching to play. And what do you have
Oh,
planned
yeah.
for the next chunk of months? And industry wise, how do you see things going?
Well, so we have these shows coming up right now, which is very interesting. I'm not like putting too much
Right, too much hope
into
or stock into it.
Yeah, just because like I mean I have no qualms about like pulling it if the numbers go sideways. And it looks kind of like they are, but like, it's going up right now. In 2 to 3 weeks it could be going down.
Mm-hmm.
I guess we'll know when this airs in 2 to 3 weeks, right? So
Yeah.
as far as moving forward is concerned right now, it's interesting because like a lot of musicians, when it hit, we're all like, okay, live streams, like tip me, please. And, it's like, dude, just get it while you can, because
Right.
to me, I saw musicians in Austin going live like 3 times a day, like, and I was like, holy shit, dude, that well's going to run dry if you keep running the bucket down.
Yep.
But I know that a lot of it, everyone's different. And some people did that to maintain their sanity while they're locked into quarantine because that was a new thing, like,
Yep.
I'd never been around to see a pandemic mismanaged. So, I mean, what the fuck? This is brand new for all of us. But um, the, my point is that like everyone's kind of had to reassess their revenue streams, to put it a very business savvy sounding way. Um, but like you had to get the grease somehow, So,
Yeah.
uh, for me, it was just like I was lucky enough to be in a place where I wasn't like really just dying, like I could kind of do what I wanted. So, like I've got a monetized YouTube channel for the band. And so I started making some videos about like some of the shit I'm working on. Cause like a lot of people who know me know that I build a lot of my own pedals and, tweak my shit and whatever. So I kind of got into that stuff a little bit, and I'll be making more of it. But my management got me into starting a Patreon, and I'm new to it. This is November is the first month of it I've done. I will be doing. I haven't done jack shit for it yet, but it's an interesting push to push me into doing a bunch of stuff I've always kind of wanted to do, because I like from over the years, every time we play shows, there's obviously guitar players there asking me about my rig, about my pedals, about my guitars, about my amps, any type of setup, how to wire stuff. And so like over the years, I've become very, I don't know how to say it, like, not like I like to teach, but like I kind of like to do like walkthroughs on stuff. And for me, it does save me a lot of time, because in the end, like somebody can be like, hey, how do you do this with your Leslie? Because I'm known for using Leslie's now. And it's like, well, I'm so happy you asked that, because that's something I've explained 100 million times, but now you can look it up on a link, So the Patreon, like, yeah, it's definitely a cool revenue stream for me. But at the same time, it's just such a cool kick in the pants to be like, hey, you've always wanted to like make all these videos about how to like get the absolute most out of a Leslie, or how to like bias your amp or something, or, like play some weird covers, or like put out some playlists for people to listen to. It's just like, man, this is really cool. Who knows when I would have got around to doing it without this. So that's a cool thing. But as far as actually making music is concerned, I'm writing quite a bit right now. I've been working on getting together with Kalu James and JT Holt. We're working on some stuff in the studio. And then my relationship with Nancy Wilson is still good, but it's just long distance now. So we've been kind of been like ships passing the night lately, but we're talking about getting back together and doing some stuff together. So I don't know. I have randomly, I'm getting some like, hey, would you be down to doing these dates in August? Like, it's just such a weird idea. I mean, first off, like I love the idea of planning so far ahead, but at the same time, I'm just like, well, sure, anything sounds good right now. Like, is it going to happen? Who knows? But I don't know. My thing right now is just like, it's so fun to play music right now. Like whenever I get together with my guys, and I feel like I'm tapping into something that like might have been lost. I'll say one really great thing about the pandemic and the lockdown and the quarantine and the death of the touring industry, at least for a while, is that, especially like going back to like, people who tour all the time, or play on 6th Street all the time, or, a combination of them both, but like you're always doing this thing, right? Like you're always doing this one thing. And I know that you can relate to this, especially because, I mean, like I've seen your touring schedule, like you tour like a dog. And it's like, the thing is, you get into doing this thing and you get these habits or you get these just like, I I don't know if they be so much. They start out as like either coping mechanisms or something you think you need to do to achieve the goal that you're going after. And then they become habits, or maybe it's the other way around. I don't know. But like, it's been really good for me to step back from it all and be like, okay, do I really need to be like, why do I think like this? Why do I think that like this one thing I'm doing is something that's even benefiting me in any way, shape, or form, other than like, it's just weird. Like you get to really, if you really can step back from yourself, and I mean, this is obviously goes beyond just being a musician, just being a human being, but like you just really just step back from what you do day to day and just take an objective view of what you're doing. And that's what was so great about like the lockdown and the quarantine, is because like you have nothing else to do, like, and like you can actually look back and be like, what would I normally be doing right now? And be like, of the stuff that I was doing, what of it was actually crucial to what I'm doing or necessary? And what of it was just like kind of staticky bullshit behavior, like, and for me, I found like a lot of things, and it wasn't necessarily like something I was doing as much as how I was thinking about what I was doing. Does that make sense? I mean, like, it's really talking like a deeper level of like.
No, it's been a common theme with talking to people through the musicians through this whole thing. A lot of people are saying very similar vibes in slightly different ways or the same ways. So it does resonate, and it's been a common thread for sure. And I can speak to that as well. And it has been this, whatever you want to call it, the silver lining of it, or the good part of it. But no, I totally get what you're saying.
Yeah, it's kind of weird to say that stuff too, because you're like, hey man, at least 230,000 people didn't die in vain. I had this kind of somewhat epiphany, like.
Sure.
It's like, oh yeah, at least I'm doing shit different now. But I don't know. But yeah, we live in a very weird time. And I mean, like I said, this is Thursday after election day. Like, this is the weirdest fucking time I've ever seen,
Yeah.
And I've been in some weird situations, but
we're in Austin, baby. We know weird.
Yeah.
But yeah. Well, Eric, thank you so much for sharing so much, man. I really appreciate your time and your thoughts and everything. So thank you. And I feel like we feel like we could have done this for 6 more hours, but we got lives to live, and maybe another time down the road. But thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Anytime, man. I hope to see you soon, dude.
I hope so too, Eric. Take care, buddy.
All right, man. Later.